Allegiance, and because we have John Mark Knight here, I've asked him to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you all please join me while we pledge allegiance to our flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
John Mark, it makes us so happy that you can walk right up to the front so nicely. Thank you. That's pleasing for all of us. We also have an opportunity to hear from another Knight. I don't think you're related, but we've got Pastor Joshua Knight of the Flourishing Grace Church that we see over on 4th East and 4th South, 4th North, I mean. And really appreciate your family being in our community.
It's a pleasure.
You're just one of us, and we love that you reach out to us and vice versa.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
offering your
Thanks for
prayer
having me.
to
Thanks
us.
for inviting me to pray to open our meeting tonight. And so let's bow our heads. Let's pray. Father, we come before you, and I pray that you would be glorified tonight in this council meeting. I pray that the things that are discussed here would honor you. And I pray that you would extend a common grace to our city and to the men and women of this council, and to the men and women who call Bountiful home. I pray that you would extend the common grace of peace in a world that is marked by anxiety and violence. I pray that you would extend the common grace of mercy and justice in a world that is marked by injustice. And I pray that you would extend the common grace of wisdom to this council tonight, that you would give them productivity, that you would give them strength, and that you would help move our city forward, and that you would prosper our city, and that we would see the best years of Bountiful ahead of us, and that we as the people of the city would be able to delight and enjoy what you are doing before us. Would you glorify yourself and bring delight and joy to your creation? For these things in the name of the Son, Jesus, amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, council.
Hey, thanks, Pastor Josh. You have a good night. You're always welcome to stay, but there you go. Perfect. Thanks a lot. With that, it is time for our public comment. We extend 10 minutes for this exercise of public comment, and just 2 minutes per person. And we ask you to give your name and where you live, and we'll turn the time over to the public.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Dustin Lance. I live at 4811 Hidden Lake Drive in Bountiful. I am here with my neighbor, Bruce Bingham. Bruce is handing out to you a map, a Google map image. I have spoken with a number of my mayors, including Bruce, Peter Valcarce, who lives next door to him, as well as a number of others. We have some concerns regarding Hidden Lake Drive. If any of you are unfamiliar with the road, I invite you to please come up to the neighborhood, come up to park your car in my driveway for 30 minutes and watch, and you'll see the problem that I'm talking about. It's a very steep road, and as you can see, it's a hairpin turn. Quite often, as people are traveling up and down this road, they end up going wide one way or another. In fact, if you look at the second page of the Google Maps, the Google Mobile, when it made the map for the street view, you can see that white line where it's either coming down or going up, and it's in the wrong direction bound lanes. I've spoken with the police department about this. They were up there investigating an accident. The officer almost got hit twice before he moved his vehicle into the circle. I've spoken with the roads department, I've spoken with the engineering department, I've spoken with the planning commission, and I keep getting the runaround. And finally, they said, why don't you just bring it to the city council? So I really would, appreciate, anything that you guys can do. Come and spend a few moments, spend it in my driveway. If you're there for a half an hour, I guarantee you're gonna see multiple near misses. In fact, we had one person hit the corner today. So, thank you for your time.
Oh, there we go. Dustin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Same topic, Bruce Bingham, 4819 Canyon View Circle. I yield my time to my former compatriot here. I support his position and believe that a painted median line would do much to calm traffic at a very low expense with a highly effective result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Morgan Harker. I'm here to discuss the need for a crossing guard at 1000 North, 275 West. I live at 1465 North, 400 West. I've lived there for 15 and a half years. I have 3 kids that attend Meadowbrook Elementary. We love to ride our bikes to school. We ride about 100 days out of the year, which means we've crossed that crosswalk roughly 1,400 times in 7 years. So I can tell you by experience how dangerous it is. Many kids in our neighborhood cross there. In fact, I know personally the names of 40 children. I recently met a 2nd grader named T who crosses by himself every day. Last Tuesday, I drove my kids to school, and on my way back, I stopped at the crosswalk where I saw Cy Granger trying to cross. Many cars drove by without stopping. I put my car in park, and I started to get out to help him because he's 8 years old. And just then a car had stopped and waved him to go. And he started running with his bike. And because I had put my car in park and was already out of my car, I was able to run in front. I looked down to the side, and there was another car coming, and he was going probably 40 miles an hour. So I ran out in front of the car to yell him to stop. Had I not put my car in stop, I would have watched him die in front of my eyes. This experience was so terrifying that I'm now volunteering as the crossing guard there. I went to the school to find out what to do about it, and Bonnie, the secretary, she's been there for 35 years, and she said for 35 years parents have tried to get a crossing guard at that place. A boy was hit there 6 years ago. I've signed a petition that was brought around by Brad Badger, a blind man who walked his daughter to school every day. Heather Sims, another mom who crosses at that area, has called last year she called the city, the police department, UDOT, and the school district to get a crossing guard. The city has said that we don't have it in our budget and that there's not enough kids crossing there. The construction workers currently that are there have seen me helping the kids across and has brought me an orange vest and told me how dangerous that this road is, that they've seen people driving 60 and 70 miles an hour down that road. I have a petition, an online petition that 290 people have signed. I'm just wondering what you guys propose we do to ensure the safety of these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. We will get back with you.
Thank you.
Right here, our engineer. Mike.
Yes, my name is Mike Agate. I'm actually the president of JMR Construction. I want to talk to you about the 2021 replacement and construction of sidewalk and curb and gutter and storm drain facilities. The low bid this year is the same price I was doing concrete for the city 2 years ago. We all know what inflation's done. I mean, gas has gone up $1 in 1 week. Materials just gone outrageously priced in the last two years. For one example, my price on an inlet box, just for material only, is $590. The low bidder this year, his price to complete the box with the inlet box was $500. I don't know how he can do it for that price. I can't even buy my materials for that. A little bit, JMR Construction has been in business for over 55 years. Several of these years, which I have been doing work for Bountiful City, Woods Cross City, Centerville City, and West Bountiful, doing the same work. The low bidder this year has been in business for 2 years. In the years I've been working with the city, we've always completed the work on time, always got the homeowners 50-50 done. And other companies that has come in, that has had low bidders, they have actually walked away or not completed the bid, and the city has always asked me to come in there and finish that bid for them. I'd like to bring to your attention, this year, the engineer's estimate was $705,064.25, which is well higher than the low bid. In the last 2 years, 3 companies came in. 2 of them were over $1 million. One was, this year was $1 million and $900,000. I've always been cheaper than that because I am a local contractor. I don't have to do the traveling. And one thing I need to bring to your attention to remind you of when it comes to low bidders is City Creek Park, City Hall, and Black Sheep. They all had recommendations, but they all couldn't complete the work. So at this time, I'd like you to consider my bid before awarding the contract for hydrovac excavation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else? With that, then we'll close the public comment time. Thank you all for being here, sharing that with us. I'll look for item 3, consider approval of minutes of the previous meetings. Any corrections or additions? If not, I'll look for a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Council reports. Please, Kate.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Kendall.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Millie.
Nothing tonight.
Oh, my gosh, we're quiet tonight. Sir Richard, you got to have something to say, Richard.
Okay.
Thanks.
If you insist. I'm happy to report that the mask mandate will expire on the 10th of next month, and that I won't be wearing masks here in this meeting anymore. So that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
You're awesome. Hey, I do have one item from me, and that is, I got a letter from the Boy Scouts of America, Crossroads of the West Council. They, as you might all be aware, they did a scouting for food drive, and they received 142,000 pounds of food. They're just sending us a message here to Bountiful and to the mayor and to the council for the support that we give the food pantry here, but also the food pantries and other food distributors that give food to those who are in need. That this is really a big deal, and we appreciate Alan Endicott, who's the Scout Executive for the Council of the West, the Crossroads Council of the West. He's the executive and CEO, and just wanted you to be aware of that. So that's a great accomplishment, 142,000 pounds of food. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Consider approval, item number 5, expenditures greater than $1,000 paid March 1st, 8th, 10th, and 15th, 2021. Anybody see any, again, corrections or additions to any of those expenditures or have any comments? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve the expenditures on March 1st, 8th, 10th, and 15th of 2021.
Perfect. The second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. We're going to turn some time over to Alan. There you are, Alan.
Mayor and council, it's great to be here tonight with several items, but this first one we have is we have the unfortunate that John Cushings needed to step down for health reasons from our Power Commission. But with that, we have an opportunity to come back and move into something with Councilor John Knight, who has been his name put out to be on the power board. And I've been just asked to talk just a little bit about the fact that, he was on the city council rep on the power board and has always been very supportive. One of the things that he was there, he was always prepared, knew what was going on. Like I said, I think the city he'd do a great job for us. And so it'd be my recommendation from the staff that we appoint John Mark Knight to the Power Commission Board.
Thank you. Any comments,
Could I, Mayor?
please?
I just want to say that Councilman Knight, former Councilman Knight, sorry, I don't mean to elect you to this position, knows the industry, and he's had experience working on the Power Commission in the past. I will say on a personal note as well, his service on this council and his service with the Power Commission ended in a way that was not necessarily satisfactory to watch, and of no fault of his own. And I didn't make a recommendation to you out of pity or out of what? What's that other word? Nepotism. Well, we are brothers from another mother. But I just know that it'll be more satisfying and more fulfilling if he can finish out his service with the city in a way that is good for him, as well as great for the city.
It's a great point.
And he'll be a wonderful asset.
Thank you. There are no other comments?
I'd be happy to.
I'll look for a motion, please.
Happy to make a motion that we approve the appointment of John Mark Knight to the Power Commission.
Second?
And a second from Kendallin. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, good. I thought for sure, it's just one that I have, the mayor is, he has to sign something again, John Mark.
I believe you're
I'm
compelled.
I'm compelled to sign something. No, we're so thrilled, really. I love what you said. Thank you, Richard. I would like sometime for us to have John Cushing come in and recognize him. Would you?
I think that would be wonderful.
If we haven't assigned that, would we make sure that that happens?
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing.
Thank you. Please, John Mark, please. That's great.
No swearing.
I just wanted to make note that since I've left, I have to say that I have to call your judgment into question sometimes. Anybody that would appoint me to the Power Commission is definitely suspect. But thank you. It's going to be so nice to be able to serve the city of Bountiful and the residents again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great to see you looking so good and walking all the way
And
up here.
thanks, Denise, too, you two have you've been more than joined at the hip here with all that you've endured, and this is a great for all of us. This is great all around. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We'll turn some time now over to Craig Christensen for the next item.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for allowing me to come here this evening and chat with you guys about our yearly pipe purchase that we like to try to get ahead of the game. But this year there was kind of a conflict with pricing. We got 3 bids, different vendors, and they couldn't lock in prices. And so we kind of had to, I talked with appropriate staff here with Lloyd and Gary, and Gary kind of gave me the go-ahead and do that. Otherwise, the price was going to skyrocket. And actually, we had to fight to get the price 24 hours later to get the same price that we got from them. So I'd just like to ask for the, consider the retroactive approval of the pipe purchase from Western Waterworks for $27,305.
Thank you for fighting for that. I appreciate you trying to look out for the city and make sure that we could get the lowest price possible. So thank you for your work. And
Oh, yeah.
do you think that some of the problems with getting the pipe had anything to do with like COVID or?
So actually, one of the resin plant is in Texas. And so from what happened in Texas, they were shut down and not able to make that resin to make that C900 PVC pipe that we use. And so it kind of set a whole setback for the entire United States. So we were able to get in there and get on that. So thank
great.
heavens we were able to, so.
That's perfect. Any other questions for Craig?
Just a thanks.
Yeah, same. I think all of us feel the same about that. So I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion that we retroactively approve the purchase of the PCV pipe from Western Waterworks in the amount of $27,305.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks again.
Perfect, thank
I
you.
hope that sun isn't shining off my head and
it's
into your
good.
eyes.
It's good.
Can you see? Because I can't see.
I don't know. I feel enlightened. All right.
You have to get sunglasses.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Brock.
Right.
Mr. Hill, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Could you talk and move over just a bit? No, yeah. Oh, there you go. No, you're fine.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a large area mower. And when I speak of a large area mower, it's a mower that mows wider than 10 feet. We feel that it's important that you understand the condition of our current mower. It's about 16 years old. They've discontinued that model, and in the process of discontinuing that model, of course, they don't make any more parts for them. So the parts are becoming more and more difficult to find, and it's becoming more of a maintenance burden than it's worth. And so I'm here to ask for your approval of purchasing a new mower. We reached out to 3 vendors in the valley, and we got 2 of the responses from those vendors. One was from Stotz Equipment. They're the state contract holder for John Deere. One was Turf Equipment. They're the state contractor for Toro Equipment. And then also Rocky Mountain Turf Equipment, who handles Jacobson mowers. We did receive 2 back. The low bid came in from Stotz Equipment, which is $63,679 for a large area mower. We did test drive that mower and felt really comfortable with it. It's got a cut on it that's got the quality of a sports field, and so we feel that that's important as we prepare to start mowing fields for Davis County at Washington Park. We know that that's out there a little ways, but we do have added acreage that we feel that this will be beneficial for us to have. They also were willing to lower the cost of another small zero-turn mower, and we got that at a much discounted rate compared to what it would be if we waited till next year. That smaller mower is in the capital equipment budget for next year. We would push that out if this is approved tonight, and we were able to get it kind of a 2-for-1 deal. So we felt good about that. So my recommendation to you tonight is that the council approve the purchase of a 2020 John Deere mower, large area mower, and a Z960 60-inch zero-turn mower through the state contract from Stokes Equipment for the combined cost of $74,979. That is budgeted for in our current capital equipment budget.
Thank you. Any questions for Brock? If not, I'd look for a motion.
I'd be happy to make a motion. We approve the purchase of the 2 mowers for just under the budgeted amount for 1 mower. And thank you for that, Brock.
Yes.
Yep, and a second?
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That also passes.
Thank you.
And we're going to turn some time over, thanks, Brock, over to Lieutenant Dave Edwards. Thanks, Dave.
While former Lieutenant Dave Edwards is coming forward, it might be an appropriate time to say he is now Assistant Chief Dave Edwards. So congratulations.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Tonight I'm here to present resolution number 2021-09, which pledges bountiful support and participation in the formulation of a 2021 Davis County Pre-Disaster Mitigation Plan. And historically, we've participated in that through gathering information, assessing risk, providing that to an overarching plan for the county with all the other municipalities. Our plan is to do the same here. By formal resolution tonight, we adopt and commit to that participation. The process for that is simply gathering information on our perceived risks for natural disasters, working with engineering and other city staff, the department heads on assessing risk and what mitigation efforts we're currently making, and developing a plan for the next 5 years on projects, different things that we can make, an effort to complete that will help us in the event of wildfire, flooding, any of those natural disasters. I recommend that you adopt this at this time to move us forward. One of the key points for this is one of the key elements in keeping us eligible for FEMA funding, just as we're receiving for the windstorm we're applying for.
Thank you, Assistant Chief. That young man had a good question today, and you answered it beautifully. Right now, he's not here to hear it, but yeah, that was a good question he asked. Any questions for Mr. Edwards?
I've got one. Go ahead.
I just want to thank you. I know that you've done a lot over the years for Bountiful, for emergency preparedness, and just in general. So I'm really glad you're the assistant chief, and I just thank you for your many hours and your years of dedication. So it's nice. It's of course we need to approve this. We want to be eligible for FEMA funding, but thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Kate.
Kate, and then you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work on this. I was curious, we struggled a little bit getting FEMA to give us funds after the fire. Will this help us in any way convince them to make good on, should we ever have another wildfire?
This is actually a foundational piece for us to be eligible for any of that funding. Without this, without having formally adopted it by resolution upon its completion, it's very difficult at that point to go back and create the documentation they require. When we just were starting along the preliminaries for the windstorm, one of the first questions that Galen and I were asked was, have you got a formally adopted a pre-disaster mitigation plan? So it's a key element in any funding that we're going to get through the federal government.
Thanks. Good question. Please, Richard.
So I don't mean to be awkward or inappropriate, but I want to thank you for sticking around when you could be leading a department elsewhere. And I also want to acknowledge that had timing been different, et cetera, you'd be leading this department, in my opinion. Thanks for being here, sincerely.
Thank you, but I've got to tell you, it's an incredible privilege to work with the finest men and women on the planet at Bountiful Police Department and in this amazing community of Bountiful. It's truly a privilege and an honor to work here.
Well, we feel blessed to have the group of folks there that we have, including their leadership, including you. And on a personal note, my parents just can't say enough good things about how well you take care of them. So I don't know what you do, but they're pretty impressed.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'll look for a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Assistant Chief.
Thanks, Mayor.
Dave Edwards, thank you. Let's see, we'll turn some time back over to you, Alan.
Well, I'll apologize for having to be up here twice in one night to have to talk to you.
No, we're glad you're here.
But Mayor and Council, it's great to be here tonight to talk about a couple little projects that we've got going on. And the first one that I bring in here is the ECI engineering service approval. If you remember in January, we came back in and we had some money approved, about $76,000, to update our drawings and everything for our substation on the southeast, which is up approximately 9th East and San Simeon Way. And as we got deeper into the project, and that project was to replace the 46,000 volt breakers, and one of those breakers is the one that we use to protect the line that goes over the mountain to Echo. We dug into it a little deeper and realized that while we were doing it, we could probably save some money if we updated the microprocessing for the SCADA system and also put some additional protection into the substation at the same time. And while they were doing the drawings, update the drawings and redesign those things on. So basically, we looked at it and would add a little bit more to their project and to the scope. We do have money in the budget to do this project. It will give us, again, the breakers that we do have were in this originally in there were built in the 70s, so we'll have new breakers, new relays, better protection, and tie back into our SCADA system. And as you know, the SCADA system is all electronic, so it's like your computer. Every so many years, it gets old and outdated. So this will get us back up to the new stuff that's out there. So We did take this to Power Commission this morning. It comes with their recommendation, the staff, that we put an additional $93,984 to give a total for $169,984 to ECI, which is the local engineering firm that we've had working with us, has done a great job. So that would be our recommendation.
Any questions for Mr. Johnson? If not, I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I motion that we approve the additional engineering services from ECI in the amount of $169,984.
Second.
Thank you. A second from Richard. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Alan. Your next item.
The next one we have is we have two projects that are going on. And the first one would be over by the Bountiful RV, over the old Panties, with that subdivision where they're putting the new homes. We want to put a line underground. We've got a line that runs across Main Street that is lower than it needs to be. You know, Main Street has become a high load street and this coming through, and we're continually having to go over and try and lift our wires up underneath without shorting it out to get the high loads through. So this has been on our radar for a number of years. If you go by and you look at it, you'll notice that the steel poles are tipping in, and they've been doing that for a while. But we're finding some of the streetlight poles there are starting to rot out, and is concerned about how secure they're going to be. So we've taken the opportunity with this subdivision to get conduits brought out of the substation and up onto Main Street, and we're going to continue that back up and around. You have previously approved the boring portion where they come in and put the conduits underground. So this would be the wire that it takes to do it. The second project is we're out rebuilding the line for additional capacity out on 3100 South, and so we'll need some of this underground cable. I will note that although I'm not retroactively approving it, they are holding the price for us. Wire's doing the same thing that the PVC conduit is. And then because we have dealt with this company, they're holding their price. This is a single source cable. It is the Okanite cable that we have been using that comes with a 40-year guaranteed life. And like I say, it seems like, but when you get a guarantee for 40 years, the cable that we initially started putting in had a 20-year lifespan, which sounded like a long time. When I started here 20, when I was installing, that seemed like a lifetime ago. Now that some of that cable's still in the ground, I'm thinking, well, it's twice in what the whole life was supposed to be. So this is great cable, but there's only one supplier that we can get in Utah, so it's Irby Incorporated. So we would like to recommend the Power Commission staff that we purchase the wire from Okanite Cable for $123,552.
Any questions?
I have a request, if I could, Mayor.
Please.
Alan, when we meet, is it the 27th of next month we're meeting? 24th? I don't know what it is.
No, I'm going to say it was the 15th. It's
Budget, for the budget meeting or for the Power Commission?
Well, when we're going to discuss solar.
That 27th.
Yeah, 27.
So would you bring a sample of the old external neutral cable and the new stuff? Do you still have those like on your desk as a paperweight or something?
Well, they're under my desk where you can't see them, but along with the other storage of all my little treasures, yes, we'll be glad to bring some of
Enough of the
that.
council has turned over since we looked at those last time to help understand why
Yeah.
we need this cable, that it might be instructive to.
Yes, I'd be
bring those
glad to
along.
bring my little bag that's got all the wire concerns that I've got that we
Yeah,
can bring
that'd
in
be
here.
great. That would be
That'd
great.
No problem, that'd be great,
And with
Richard.
that, I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the purchase of this cable for $123,552.
And a second?
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? That passes, and so you're on for a show and tell.
Yes, unfortunately, I'll apologize now that a month from now, you'll have to put up with me here
Oh,
for an
good,
extra
good.
hour.
We'll love it. Okay.
Appreciate it, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Alan. And Lloyd, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. Tonight, just a couple of contracts for your consideration. The first one is the asphalt overlay contract for this year. We typically bid out these larger overlay projects that are a little bit beyond the ability of our street department to do. These are more high-volume roads that need a little attention. And for this current fiscal year, plans include overlaying Medical Drive from 4th East to 5th South, and then Lakeview Drive from 5th South up to Bountiful Boulevard. So those are both pretty big streets. They have a lot of traffic on them. It really takes a lot of traffic control and effort to get these projects done. Because we had a need for overlay work up in the Cave Hollow area, just in the next budget year, we combined these projects into a single contract. So we could get one contractor, have them work kind of back to back on these two projects, and take advantage of the size of the two total projects. You can see we had interest from 8 companies. That was really surprising to us, considering the market. We felt really lucky that we got that kind of a response. And Black Forest Paving was the low bid on that. We recently worked with Black Forest on the reconstruction of 100 North Street, and it was a great experience. They were really good to work with, and they produced a really good product. So that's our recommendation, is the council accept Black Forest's proposal, and we have unit prices for this work, because, you know, some of those things can change as you get up there and do a little bit extra on this side street, or a few more valves and manholes. But our recommendation is to accept the proposal of Black Forest Paving.
Thanks, Lloyd. Any questions from the council?
I have a question.
Please.
So, not questioning your math, but these bids are all significantly lower, you know, $100,000 lower than your estimate. And with COVID, we've seen the price of almost everything go up, the water pipe, the electrical lines that we need. I'm curious, why would asphalt have been so much lower than your estimate?
The bid of Black Forest Paving is 78% of the engineer's estimate. I think that's due to a couple reasons. One, we like to bid these early in the year. This time of the year, contractors are putting together their schedule. A lot of times, they have holes that they're trying to fill, depending on the contractor. I think that's one. The other consideration, I think, is that some guys can literally just do it cheaper. Now, that being said, imagine sitting in your office, not being a paving contractor, but having last year's prices to look at and review. The engineer's estimate is kind of a swag. I mean, let's call it what it is. I'm not a paving contractor. I can go look and see what the history has been. It's an estimate, and only an estimate. In my career, I've always tried to be like number 3 or number 4 in an estimate. I mean, that gives me an idea that I'm really in the market. I'm pretty close. Were we off a little bit on this one? Yeah, maybe. But like other contracts, you run the gamut of economies on these. You get guys who will bid projects, and if they get it, they're really looking to line their pocket. You have other guys who are really hungry, and they'll do it to cover their costs, sometimes less than cover their costs. It's hard to gauge.
Well, I appreciate your assessment, and it's always nice that they're under your assessment from a taxpayer perspective.
I'm a really bad overlay contractor.
Any other questions from the council? Thanks, Kate. If not, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I motion that we approve the proposal from Black Forest Paving for the 2021 asphalt overlay contract.
Second?
Thank you, and a second from Kendall. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And you have another.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I make my remarks about this contract, I would just like to start off by saying I've had the privilege of working with Mike Agate and JMR over the last 20 years on many, many occasions. They have done a lot of great work for the city, there's no question. They have provided a valuable, timely, solution to many of our problems. And I appreciate the great working relationship that we've had with the Agates over the years. Just by the nature of our contractual obligations on this contract, we try and bring some continuity and some economy to the city by providing an extension clause in this contract. We weren't able to come to terms on that over the last year, and so the engineering department really didn't have much choice other than to rebid the contract. Just a minute ago, I talked about the engineer's estimate being 78%, or the low bid being 78% of the engineer's estimate. On this contract, the low bidder is 83.5% of the engineer's estimate. Would we have liked that number to be a little closer? Absolutely. As engineering staff, you can see we only got 4 responses on this particular contract. This is a difficult contract. We run these guys all around town. We're working on sidewalks that the power department has had to take out. We're working on concrete panels that the water department has had to take out. We're fixing driveways, drive approaches, settled curbs, you name it. This is really a big contract. It takes a lot of effort to manage this one. My staff was really nervous with the results of the bid. We spent a lot of time researching references. We actually took an afternoon, we went down to Lehigh to go look at some of the handiwork of the contractor. Not something I've ever done in 23 years. But to allay some of the concerns of my staff, I felt it was really the right thing to do. To meet with people. We met with residents along the projects where these guys had worked to understand how they were to work with. You know, I asked them, did they have lunch in your front yard? Did they leave their big gulp cups in your yard? Did they block your driveways with equipment and materials? Were they friendly? Were they informative? These are the kinds of things that are very important on a contract like this, because we're actually working in a place that's very, very personal for many of our residents, you know, right in their front yard. I want you to know that we don't come to these recommendations lightly. In addition to those concerns, though, we feel a great responsibility to you and to the citizens to be physically responsible. Now, we all know, we can all think of business models where things are priced exceptionally high and where things are priced exceptionally low. In the contracting world, that's often the case. Mr. Eggett rightfully pointed out that we've had some experience with those who have represented themselves as being one thing but demonstrated that they're another. That's not lost on me. That's taken a lot of my time. It's taken a lot of energy. It's taken a lot of emotion. But that being said, 3 years ago, would this have bothered me? Absolutely. Today, does it bother me? Yeah, it bothers me. But I also have a skill set now. I have a resource too. People who don't perform on Bountiful City contracts, they're held to the letter of their contract. Just this week, I've been in touch with a bonding company about a claim on one of our former contractors. It's the nature of the work. And I don't think that just because a company has been in business for 2 years, that that's really an excuse to eliminate them. I can't think of any companies that have been around forever. At some point, all companies have been around for 2 years. Now, the proof is, can they do the work? Can they keep up to the schedule? And they provide the quality of work that we demand and that we expect? I think they can. I think Hydrovac can do that. Now, if they fall short, we may have to get out the sausage maker and make some sausage again. But my recommendation is that you accept the proposal of Hydrovac for this contract, knowing that you have 4 sets of eyes in the engineering department that have your back. That will make sure that we're getting what we pay for. To answer any questions.
Lloyd, thank you for that explanation and for your thorough examination of this. So I don't mean to ask a dumb question, but in your research, I appreciate the fact that you went and interviewed homes, people, and you really examined their work, and I think that's great. I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Did you kind of revisit with them and say, looks like you're the low bidder, are you really sure that you can deliver? I mean, I'm guessing you had that conversation.
We've had that on several levels. We explained to them many times, this is the nature of the work. Are you prepared to do that? Yes, we are.
And
We question specific bid items and their ability to perform them at that price. And we were assured that those prices were by design, by them.
I appreciate you doing that homework, and no one has a crystal ball, but I do think we owe it to our residents we owe it to the taxpayers in this city to go with the bid when we can. So, thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, if I could, Mayor. I just want to say that if the difference in bids was $17,000 or a reasonable amount, then I'd be more inclined to maybe go off script and recommend that we stick with the known quantity. But the difference in these bids is over $171,000. And I think that the responsible thing for us to do is to treat these folks as if they're responsive and responsible bidders, take them at their word, and allow them to save the residents of Bountiful almost $200,000 over the course of the next year. So, and we'll hope for the best.
Any
I
other questions?
have a question for Lloyd. Lloyd, in your following up on their references and their past work, you mentioned in your description that this is a contract where you're going to run them around town doing multiple things throughout the construction season. And in their past 2 years of experience, have they held a similar contract with a city of our size?
I wouldn't characterize it as the same kind of contract, but they have a division where they've been performing work to install, irrigation meters in Utah County, kind of similar in nature, where, they would have a series to do in this neighborhood, then jump over to another neighborhood that involved concrete replacements, work in people's front yards, a little bit. There was a translation to this project.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that you've gone to the trouble to check all those references.
Any other questions, or please, Gary?
Thank you. Just a comment, and for those that might not be familiar with our ordinances, a reminder that we really don't have much flexibility. If they qualify and are responsible, even if the difference was $10,000 or $1,000, we're still required by our own ordinance to select the lowest bidder. So Lloyd has appreciate the due diligence to make sure that they were responsible, qualified, but we simply don't have a lot of latitude anyway. It's not a matter of picking favorites. It's we are bound by our own laws.
Thank you.
Do we have any other concrete contracts with JMR besides this one? Yeah, have we had any in the past with Mike?
This has been the typical project that they've worked on.
Are there other projects of the city? Excuse me. Is there any other special projects from the city that they might still be involved with?
We're not planning on bidding out any more of this type of work right now, but
Okay.
there certainly is no shortage of this type of work.
Yeah. Well, then I would look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion that we approve the proposal from Vac Excavation for the 2021 concrete replacement projects contract.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Now some time for Francisco.
Yes, thank you.
Last couple of items, please.
Is it okay if I do it from here?
Fine,
Thank you.
please.
This first item is a proposed amendments to the land use code. This is the omnibus land use code. As on a yearly basis, we'd like to comb through the code and see what items we need to fix. This was initiated by staff. It wasn't initiated by an applicant. And it was reviewed by the Planning Commission last week, where it received, they forwarded a positive recommendation. They did request to remove a component. Obviously, we did not move forward on that one, and we're going to be working on that one throughout the year. These amendments include clarifying the building height in residential districts, adding additional language, and amending the non-conforming uses and non-complying structures. It removes a typo out of the home occupation daycare code. It clarifies the mixed-use zone. It reclassifies some uses in the, also in the mixed-use district or zone. It removes a silly provision for the Planning Commission regarding voting. It specifies where street trees shall be located. It adds access requirements for removing curb cuts when they're not being used, and it adds 2 more components for our site plan review application submittal. This is a public hearing, so we do ask that you hold that, and that you approve the proposed ordinance as drafted in your packet. I will be more than happy to expand on any of these components.
Any questions from the council before we do a public hearing?
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have a-
Okay.
oh,
No, go ahead.
oh, thanks. I just have a question on, under general provisions, section C. That a lot of additional language was added, and I'm just curious to know, it went from 1 sentence to about, I can't count, plus the subset, the subtext. So I'm just
Sure,
curious
that
to know
was-
why all that additional language is needed.
Sure. This is regarding non-conforming uses and non-compliant structures. And what we attempted to do here is that the code specified expansion and enlargement, but it didn't specify whenever a site or a building was getting smaller. And what would happen in cases where we had that specific situation. So we clarified it and renamed it alteration and modification, which is, by definition, an expansion and an enlargement, but it also includes some other components that would, in some cases, make a site smaller. And we felt a lot more comfortable if we were able to take the doctrine of non-conforming uses and non-compliant structures, where we would be able to look at 6 additional components in relationship to how that specific redevelopment, if you will, modification, could affect these. So we have another bite at the apple in mitigating and reducing impacts regarding setbacks, height, aesthetic, landscaping, parking, and traffic and pedestrian circulation. So we feel that we added a tool to be able to address some of these components. And we felt that we needed to add this as Bountiful City is not in its infancy. We're often facing redevelopment, as indicated in the work session today, so we're better suited to address the redevelopment throughout town.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I
Thank you.
piggyback on that same sentence. Is that okay?
That's exactly the area I was going
Okay,
towards, so
I'll
this,
follow you then.
you,
Okay, never.
she's got, Councilwoman Barr got my question, so we're good. You go
So
ahead.
the second to last sentence, or line in that paragraph, Francisco, says, shall consider whether all the following factors are reduced or mitigated where applicable. So in order for a non-conforming property to allow any improvement, all of those have to be improved?
Yes, where applicable. So we understand that every application may not hit all of them, but we wanted to have an opportunity to try to reduce and mitigate these 6 specific components.
Sure.
And by the way, Clint and I, we didn't necessarily struggle, but we discussed where we should put that, where applicable. At one point, it was towards the beginning of the sentence, we ended up with placing it at the end to indicate that not every single application, we're going to have to look at all these 6 components.
So, to me, a very simple person, it sounds like you'd have to reduce the nonconformity in every one of those categories in order to qualify for any sort of change. Is that the case?
No. What we want to do is we want to, yes, reduce the nonconformity. That's specified in the second or third red sentence. We want to have an opportunity to look at these 6 components to mitigate these specific items outlined on page 43.
It's the categories and not necessarily them in their entirety that we're trying to reduce.
In some cases, it might be both, but we still want to be able to reduce impacts regarding these 6 items.
So wouldn't the word any work better there than all? And I know I'm just playing with words, but
Can I
please.
add?
And by the way, the haircut is killer.
Thank you.
Looks great.
My kids told me I looked way younger, so
It looks
there you
good.
go. See, now you got me blushing.
How old are you?
Well, I wanted to jump in because this is partially, this was done at my request. I wanted to there was an issue, or we were starting to see some potential issues with applicants coming in and taking advantage of a non-conforming use policy or a non-conforming use ordinance. So let me back up really quick and just say this. When it comes to non-conforming uses, there are two strategies or philosophies or policies that you need to follow. The first is anything non-conforming is non-conforming and you can't change it at all. There are benefits to that because what that does is if somebody wants to come in and develop a site or develop a lot, then they basically have to bring everything into compliance. That can be good because it brings you into compliance with the ordinance. The problem with that is that may actually encourage a property owner to just leave undesirable use and, for lack of a better term, run it into the ground. And we've actually had a developer tell us that they would just, well, okay, then I'll just run it I'll keep that same unattractive building there and run it into the ground. The other, which is a way that the council could go if you like that. The other one is to reduce the nonconformity, and that allows for improvements to happen. The issue there is if they put a substantial amount of resources into that, then that might you may be stuck with a almost compliant but not quite compliant structure or site. So in seeing that, I was concerned about there being potentially some developers or landowners that would take advantage of a non-conforming policy that would allow to reduce. So in one circumstance, for example, if you say just any of these, we'll take landscaping, for example. Let's say that their landscaping is not conforming and they come in and they say, okay, well, I've added a tree, so therefore I've mitigated one of your factors, therefore I can do this. If you look at this, the real issue, and really the only one that maybe impacts the neighbors the most, which is really the only one that is kind of a hard line, is number 1, setback restrictions. That's the one that impacts neighboring properties the most, and maybe number 2 is the second, height restrictions. And those ones, you can't really fix a setback restriction, right? Like either if you're on top of your neighbor's property and it's non-conforming, the only way you're going to fix that is to demolish the structure and move it. We felt strongly that setbacks are important, and that one is kind of an all or nothing proposition. But all these others, if you think about it within a larger site with numerous uses, or let's say it's a commercial development with numerous stores or offices on the site, setback restrictions typically aren't a problem, but let's use that as an example. Setback restriction is not a problem. Neither is height. Then they go to aesthetics. Okay, well, they're going to improve the building. They're going to put a new facade on the building. They're going to make it look better. That helps. They're going to improve landscaping by adding 200 square feet of landscaping or these 6 trees. It doesn't bring it into compliance, but it makes it better. Parking is an issue on this site. It's been an issue for years that people are able to come in and park a site better where there may have been complaints before we add parking to it. It doesn't mean that it has to meet the ordinance. And in fact, another part of our ordinance says, which you'll probably remember from your days on the Planning Commission, that you don't have to meet the parking ordinance if you can have a traffic study done and a professional says, no, that you can park this site. And then finally, the traffic and pedestrian circulation, that's more of just a safety issue. We've seen some of the issues that we've had, early in COVID when people were using the drive-throughs and we were actually seeing accidents on the road because circulation was so bad on certain sites. This just helps us to improve a safety function. So all of those minus the setback are really just, can you fix something on there? And we feel like, okay, well, you got rid of this ugly thing on top of the building and fixed the aesthetics. That looks great. You've added some trees, which helps improve the neighborhood feel. And you've fixed the parking or had a traffic study done where a professional says it will work, and you've fixed the pedestrian or traffic circulation. So none of those are all or nothing propositions, and maybe it sounds that way, and we didn't intend it to be that way. So if there are suggestions, we'd love to hear them from you, and obviously you're the ultimate decision maker here, so what you say goes. But we feel pretty strongly that this will prevent abuse of somebody coming in and saying, look, I added a tree, therefore we can now move forward with my new project, which is still crappy, it just has a new tree.
Yep. So the two options, the two approaches that you described, I strongly believe in the latter, that we ought to be able to improve non-conforming structures or non-conforming conditions. I see what you're saying about considering all of those and how we don't want somebody to be able to come in and shortchange us by just doing one little thing. So if that word all doesn't put us in that first approach and leaves us in the second approach, beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just be quiet.
Yeah, and the way we interpret that as a staff and how the planning director would interpret that is you just have to improve all of those things. You don't have to fix them. So you just make a substantial improvement by improving all those things that you can. If you can add a parking stall, great. If you can add some trees and some shrubbery to make it look better, great. If you can add something to the facade to make it better, or some new windows or something like that, then it makes it better. And that goes back to the original principles that are above that talk about that it's in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood and consistent with the general plan. And that's really what we're trying to do, is just make it fit into the neighborhood.
Okay.
So Richard, you good?
Yeah.
Kate, are you good?
Now I have another question in the same area.
Okay.
So on page 43 of the packet, after the list of things that an applicant can improve, it says that the plan should be reviewed by the Planning Commission. How are we going to judge? Is it going to be a subjective judgment by the Planning Commission whether they have improved enough of items 1 through 6? If they've made a 10% improvement in landscaping and a 50% improvement in parking, is the Planning Commission empowered to make that recommendation, and do we have that final say at that point on a non-conforming use improvement?
So again, that was one that we spent a lot of time discussing. At one point, there was some talk about percentages on things like landscaping and aesthetics, but we felt like if we just included all of these factors, going back to what we were just talking about, that if there can be an improvement on all of those factors, even if they are smaller, that it's going to be a substantial improvement overall. It is
still a checkbox on, did you improve enough in your overall kind of score? And so that determination of you've improved enough is a recommendation made by the Planning Commission to the City Council
We are allowing the planning commission to have that final determination.
They're the final determination.
Correct. On those current determinations of non-conforming uses and non-compliant structures and any alteration, modification that would be associated with that redevelopment.
And that's something that if the council wanted to see, that's certainly something that you could do. Back to that point, we use the terms reduces and mitigates. So it's not just that you're reducing the nonconformity, but that you're also mitigating the impacts to the neighbors. So that's really the tools that you're going to be able to look at and say, okay, traffic and pedestrian circulation. This site has traditionally been a nightmare for people to park, the pedestrians. We've had accidents, we've had people get hit by cars, whatever the case may be. How is this going to mitigate that problem? So I can see here that you've reduced it by adding parking stalls, but how have you mitigated the risk? You know, are you adding crosswalks? Are you putting in lighting or different ways to mitigate those things? So that's why it's reduces and mitigates. So again, it still is somewhat subjective, but it's at least based in some standards there.
And two, I think where you're going is if you look on the top of page 42, if you look at that chart, the page cut off. So the very first category is staff. The second one is administrative committee. The third one is the planning commission, and the last one is city council. We didn't want to alter the policy where the planning commission is already responsible for reviewing the expansion of a nonconforming use. We just changed the term to alteration and modification of a nonconforming use, and we kept them as the designated, I guess, land use authority for those specific cases.
Okay. You good? So.
Yes.
I will just add that this is a really kind of complex part of the land use law that's kind of hard to get your head around. And the Utah code uses different terms at different times, and so did our code. We tried to clarify some of that by doing this. The code uses non-complying and non-conforming, the Utah code, and it can be confusing. I think just Francisco, Curtis, and I alone probably spent 5 hours discussing this.
I think we spent more than that.
More than that. And that doesn't include some time that we spent with other staff members going through it, just the three of us alone. We dragged poor Lloyd into it for an hour once. And
Well, if we don't have any other questions, then we'll turn it over to a public
I do have one more, if I
Please.
could. I'm
Okay.
sorry. On page 10, number 5 at the top, existing drive approaches. I'd like to know, I have one of these. I have a drive approach on Second West that accesses my backyard, but it's not formally attached to a parking structure or anything else, so I guess it could be considered abandoned. Why are we interested in getting rid of those?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and defer over to our city engineer.
Thank you.
Who provided this recommendation for
And
us.
I'd like to ask him in his response, if he could tell me why that's not a legal taking, then that would be great as well.
This suggestion came up because of experience, like many things that we do around the city.
Sure.
In the past, we have had situations where properties have redeveloped and accesses to sites have changed. Some individuals have been reluctant to invest funds or even complete requirements that were part of their approval process explicitly. We have other residents in town who construct these without permits. I believe this will help us to enforce those kinds of provisions. But the city code also empowers, for lack of a better word, the city engineer, authorizes him to designate access points. It doesn't mean that they're restricted, but if an access from the public right-of-way is, if it's essentially been abandoned by a different use or a redevelopment, something like that, we want to be able to require that curb and gutter be removed and be replaced. Typically, this is an issue we see with redevelopment projects.
Okay. So if an owner of a corner property that has a driveway on one street and access to a rear yard on another street that has historically had those two approaches, they wouldn't necessarily be forced to abandon one of them?
No, we would encourage such property owners to provide paved access and parking.
Theoretically.
Theoretically.
Anything else, Richard? Are you good?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Anyone
I
else?
just wanted to make sure you're good with
Are you okay?
where we're at. I would tell you this, that we did think about putting in objective standards on all of these things, like and it would have grown this thing by about 2 or 3 pages. And we feel like this will do it. If we even see it one time where it's an issue, then we'll bring it back.
And adding more specific language would not allows, but I would be concerned with unintended consequences that we might cause. So that's why we said, let's take a look at this 6 and go from there.
Yeah, sometimes
Correct.
there's no flexibility when you put in a percentage.
Right.
Or you put this there, then you are stuck by that.
Right.
And you have no ability to have that flexibility, so.
I guess to explain what I was thinking on that point is, long ago, in a land far away to the south, I served on a housing advisory and appeals board, and it was designed for when a landlord could not bring their property up to meeting the housing code. Windows were too small or stairways were too short, and often the homes were in historic districts, older neighborhoods, and the board I served on had some authority to look at some of these very similar issues of what can you do to improve it. You can't meet the standard, but what can you do to improve it? And that helped, the landlords, it helped keep housing options available. Sometimes, of course, the applicants liked the decision of the board I served on, and sometimes they didn't. And when they didn't, they had the ability under the ordinance of that municipality to appeal, in this case, to the mayor. It was a slightly different form of government. And so, because we haven't given, I guess, specific criteria where an applicant could say, check, I met the requirements of this, because we are still giving the Planning Commission the ability to be somewhat subjective on whether they have met enough. Are we comfortable that they're the final decision there, or should there be some ability to appeal back up to the council? And I don't know that I've decided, necessarily. I to a certain extent deferring to staff and to those that serve on the Planning Commission currently and in the past that have dealt with these types of issues as they come up, since I have never served on the Planning Commission and have just this other sort of related experience that I'm, trying to use as helping to decide what makes the most sense.
Perhaps this would help in terms of there are different designated bodies that are the land use authority. In some cases, it's council. In some cases, the planning commission. In some cases, it's the administrative committee. In some cases, it's me and also my staff, depending on that type of application. All of these land use cases or determinations are appealable to the administrative law judge. And that's part of the overall policy that we already have in place. Does that help? So if there is a disagreement, they do have a way to
There's an appeal process.
correct on every single land use determination that we make.
Yeah, and I guess in this one, it just feels like with this list of 6 things, because you could improve and mitigate, and it'll be property by property, right? You could be 10% on this one and 25% on this item, but 100% improvement on this one, and it just seems like there's still a lot of gray area, to my way of thinking. Do I agree with the policy that it is better to improve properties to any extent rather than allow someone to let their property rot into the ground because it's so burdensome to bring a non-conforming use up to code? Yes, I want people to, I'd rather baby steps to improvement than have no improvement at all. But it does seem like granting a lot of kind of gray area authority to the Planning Commission.
So I would add just a couple of things. First off, we're very fortunate in Bountiful City, as you all know, that we have a very highly qualified planning commission. They are by far the most qualified planning commission I've ever worked with in my career. They have very particular sets of skills that are very different, but also very relevant to the planning commission and what they do. So I would say that you have some very competent people. In addition to that, they are great people. They are very considerate and do a very good job of identifying issues and listening to applicants, also listening to staff. So what I would say is I think you've got a great planning commission. Obviously that can change, but I'm not sure it'll change in Bountiful. I think we just have a lot of good people. But because I've seen planning commissioners come and go since I've been here, and they've all been great, and they've all been qualified. The other thing that I would say is I think the administrative law judge is great, because ultimately that's where it has to go anyway, even if there is a city council step. And then the other one that I would just caution the council on is, that whenever you bring something into the city council's purview, it has the potential to at least for someone to try to make it a political issue. And that's an easy way to just avoid that is just by going to the planning commission. I'll also tell you that in my experience, that's what most cities have. It doesn't go to the city council afterward. There's actually another step after the ALJ, and that's the district court. So there's levels to this stuff. And there's another step after that, the Court of Appeals. And another one after that, if they want to push that. But what I'm saying is that I think that, personally, I think the Planning Commission is the right place to make that decision. And I also think that they are they're just great. They're really qualified, really good people. I mean, for example, just looking at these factors, we have a traffic engineer on our Planning Commission, and traffic and pedestrian circulation is something that is very near and dear to his heart. Looking at landscaping, we have a landscape architect on our Planning Commission. We have very considerate, very competent, very qualified people. That would be my recommendation. Obviously, the council can do what they want, but that's what I would suggest.
I'm comfortable with the qualifiers that have been added to this, especially considering what it originally was and what we've added to it. I think it's a good starting point, and it doesn't limit us too much one way or the other, and still allows for that flexibility that Francisco was talking about. And I think if we find it's a problem, we can always revisit, but I think it's a good starting point, and it's a good addition from what it was.
May I suggest then that we go to a public hearing, and maybe we'll have questions that we have after that. Are you comfortable with that, Kate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, with that, we will open this up to a public hearing. Again, for those of you who don't know, if you would come here to the podium, give your name and your address, we'd be very, very happy to hear from you in regards to this ordinance. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing, and I will, at this point then, look for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I motion that we approve ordinance 2021-3, which proposes the proposing land use code text amendment.
Second?
There's a second. Any further discussion?
If I could,
Please.
I'd like to ask Councilmember Bradshaw if she's comfortable leaving it as is, or if you want further discussion on the appeal authority.
I think I'm comfortable at this point with the work that the staff and the Planning Commission has done. I think it's an improvement.
Great.
Do we always land on the right policy every time? No, it's why this process is open-ended and can be changed. So it's something I look forward to hearing from, our member that serves on the Planning Commission going forward as to whether it's, too much gray area without enough certainty provided in the ordinance, or from residents, that have experience as they're bringing properties forward. That this would just be something I'd probably keep an eye on going forward, not having an opportunity to have served on the Planning Commission at this point, but.
Great. It's a really good point. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you all have assignments at various committees and commissions, is so that we have that. So, Richard, so we have any further discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item, Mr. Francisco.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
I'd be happy to make a motion that we grant site plan approval for the two-family residential unit located at 1350 South, 200 West.
Second?
Good. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Don't you love Richard when he just, hey, hey,
Really do.
Francisco,
I do.
you just didn't have to take off your mask or anything. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.